Something that I have noticed in Gilmore Girls, something that I don't think the creators of the show particularly meant to highlight or show, is how not having a steady, stable, and emotionally available parental figure, particularly a father, can negatively impact your life. I highlight dads in particular because Rory grows up without a father in her life, at least not consistently. And even when he was there for her, he wasn't involved in decisions regarding her or how she was raised. Hi, I'm Laura from Your Little Sisters Productions, and I love to talk about movies and TV shows, particularly Gilmore Girls. Quick shout out to Lindsay K for our avatar artwork. Her Instagram handle will be in the comments below. Gilmore Girls and parental issues has been in my mind for a while now, starting back when I did my video on Christopher and whether he was really a bad dad or simply misunderstood. Check it out if you haven't already. This is part one in my deep dive into the parents of this iconic show, and I'm kicking it off by talking about the dads, or in some cases, the lack of them. I looked up some real world statistics and studies on the effects of fatherlessness, and the more I read about it, the more I could see the consequences playing out in the characters of Gilmore Girls. Rory has been criticized by almost the whole fandom for going from the perfect golden child to someone who steals yachts and drops out of Yale and cheats on her boyfriends. And I want to be clear. I'm not going to put all the blame for her decisions on the lack of a father figure in her life, but I do think it's something that affected her deeply and never gets fully resolved. Having any parent, a mom or a dad, decide to up and leave you and not be there consistently can leave a sense of wondering, what is wrong with me? Why was I not enough for them to stay? The people I love will leave me, and so on. The first time we see Rory bring up any sad feelings over not having her dad in her life more is when Christopher is leaving after visiting them in season 1. And Rory figures out that he had proposed to Lorelai and is asking why she didn't accept. She starts to talk about how much she really wants them to be together, and Lorelai says that she doesn't like seeing Rory get all worked up over the topic. The only other time I can think of when Rory shows just how upset she is over the lack of her dad's presence is after he leaves them to be with Sherry and their baby, and she yells at him that she doesn't need him. Go be someone else's dad. And this outburst of her feelings is never really brought up again on the show. Rory very clearly has a lot of sadness and anger over not having her dad in her life, and yet no one ever seems to sit down and talk her through it or hear her out. Her mom squashes it down because she doesn't like seeing Rory get upset, but that's not helping anything. When Rory is going to be a debutante and have a coming out party, she reads in the handbook that it's customary for the girls' dads to present them, and she gets sad and even makes a joke that the cable guy from last week looks nice, maybe he could present her. Her dad is so unreliable, so out of her life, so disconnected that she doesn't believe he would come if she called and asked. Lorelai calls Christopher and tells him that after all the times he said he would show up and didn't, all the times he said he would call and didn't, and in general not being there means that he owes her big time and he better show up for his daughter. He assures Lorelai that he will definitely be there. Rory says, that means there's a 50-50 chance he'll come. And Lorelai says, I don't know, he sounded pretty sure. I'd say 60-40. I know that that's a joke and it comes off as a lighthearted moment, but it goes to show just how unreliable Christopher has been that even when he says, yes, I will be there, they are still giving him a pretty high percentage of not showing up at all. There are statistics from various studies showing that children who grow up in fatherless homes tend to have higher rates of committing crime, along with difficulty maintaining good relationships with people. And while I think that Rory not having Christopher more in her life is far from the only factor that leads to her cheating on her boyfriends and eventually stealing a yacht with Logan, it's a little funny to me that she technically fits into that statistic. She gets charged for the crime of stealing the yacht and has to do several hours of community service. I also see Rory and how she treats her relationships with her boyfriends and can see some correlation there as well. Take the night that Dean tells her he loves her for the first time, and she is unable to say it back. She starts to say, look at my mom and dad. They loved each other. Look what happened. And Dean interrupts by saying, you don't get pregnant by saying I love you. But I think he missed what she was saying completely. She wasn't trying to say that her parents loved each other and that's why they got pregnant and that wasn't a great thing. I think that she was trying to point out her dad claimed he loved her mom and then left. Her dad claims he loves Rory, but he's nowhere to be found. Her mom hasn't had a long term, successful relationship with a man up to this point in Rory's life. She has never seen firsthand how a healthy relationship works, how conflict gets resolved, or how to communicate effectively in the context of a relationship. Side note, but I have personally never liked that Dean breaks up with Rory just because after 3 months together at the age of 16, she's not ready to say I love you to him yet. Like, give her some time to process and figure it out for herself. I do like that Rory learns from this experience and later tells Logan she loves him without any expectation of a return, so there's that, I guess. When Lorelai and Max get together, you can see just how attached Rory gets to him and the idea of them being a family. Rory wants to invite him to go ice skating with them. She calls him by his first name. She's more calm than Lorelai is the first time he stays the night at their house, even though by this point he and Lorelai are engaged and he's moving in with them. And in a heartbreaking moment while interviewing him for her school newspaper after Lorelai and Max break up, Max and Rory let each other know just how much they wanted to be a family. I know that Max would have treated Rory like a daughter, taking her under his wing and being invested in her life and her well being. Rory was looking forward to having a father figure in her life, even if her own mom couldn't answer Max when he asked what would his role in Rory's life be after they got married. It's clear that Rory longed to have a consistent father figure in her life, and that the impact of knowing that her own dad chose not to be there for her caused a lot of emotional stress and sadness that she was never able to express and work through. So it comes out through relationship troubles and parentifying and always trying to be perfect and building a father type relationship with her grandfather as best she can. I know a lot of people, including myself, have said that Luke is more Rory's father than Christopher. He makes food for her when she's sick. He was at her high school graduation. He gives her presents every birthday and sets up balloons and cake for her. He fights Dean for her, although that wasn't a great moment for him taking on a 16-year-old, but it does show how much he cares for Rory. He even looks out for her more than his own nephew Jess when they start dating. And I agree, Luke is there in a lot of ways for Rory, and it doesn't ever come off as though he cares about her as a means to get to Lorelai, which other fans have pointed out. That's how it comes off with Christopher in the first 2 seasons. Luke very clearly loves Rory and wants the best for her, and she loves Luke back in the same way. But I have a counterpoint to Luke being the best father figure to Rory, something that I think a lot of people might actually get angry at me for. So if you do disagree with the point I'm about to make, feel free to respectfully state it in the comments below, and please correct me if I'm wrong about any of the facts. If I remember correctly, Rory never goes to Luke for advice, or to talk through her problems, or even just to talk about her day or life in general. They don't really seem to be comfortable talking to each other alone. They were pretty awkward around each other when Luke came to ask her to tutor Jess, and Lorelai seemed surprised that he would want to talk to Rory directly, which made me think that they hadn't ever talked about anything deeper than don't drink too much coffee or don't follow your mom's bad habits, which is what we see most of the time when they eat at Luke's. Not that he should be seeking out talking to a teenage girl he's not a guardian over, but it does show that even with him there, Rory is missing out on some important aspects of having a dad, such as being able to talk comfortably and seek advice from a father figure, spending quality time with them, having someone to turn to when feeling sad and being comforted by them. I'm sure if Lorelai and Luke had gotten together earlier, Luke would happily fill this part of a father figure, but they didn't, so that never happens. I would say that Rory's grandpa fills that role out a little bit more, just because of the quality time and conversations they have. And because of that, even though he only became a constant to her when she was 16 and on, she takes on some of his traits and views of the world as she grows older, more so than Christopher's or Luke's. Not that she becomes exactly like her grandparents, but there are definitely times when we see their influence in her life, for better or worse. Lorelai also has daddy issues. Her father never left her. I mean, he traveled for work a lot, but he was there. He provided financially for Emily and Lorelai. They never had to worry about anything. But he never really spent time getting to know his daughter and spending quality time with her or having conversations with her. Like I mentioned was missing with Rory's connection between Luke and Christopher. Lorelai talks about a time she got kicked out of summer camp, and her dad came to pick her up, but they were both completely silent on the way home, even though it was several hours. Being silent when angry and allowing yourself to calm down before talking to your kid can be an effective way of making sure you don't lose control of your anger. but I doubt that's why her dad was quiet on the way home. Especially when we also have the episode when he comes to spend the day with her in Stars Hollow, and Lorelai is anxious, saying she hasn't spent this much time alone with him since that car ride, and they don't seem to have much to talk about or know how to act around each other. And of course, after her dad passes away and she's asked to think of a memory to share after the funeral, she is unable to think of something nice to say right away. Richard loved Lorelai, and he was the best dad he knew how to be to her, but that doesn't mean that there weren't issues with their relationship and communication and lack of freedom on her part. Being a present parent is more than, well, just being present. That's a big factor, but it's only the beginning. You not only have to provide for the physical needs of your children, but also the emotional and mental needs as well. That means spending quality time with your children, actively listening to them, encouraging them, helping them work through problems they face as they grow up, and giving them age appropriate freedom to make their own choices and face the consequences, good and bad. Richard was with Emily on locking Lorelai down and being as strict as they were with her growing up, which only added to her rebelliousness as a teenager and her teenage behavior even when she's an adult. I'll get more into Lorelai and how her parents affected her in my second video because honestly, it seems as though her mom did most of the raising, but needless to say, her dad not being an active participant did hurt her, although his participation would probably have just added to her being stifled, so she was probably in a bad spot either way. Jess is another character who very obviously has father issues. His own father abandoned him and never got in contact until Jess was 18, and his mom went through several short lived relationships with men who had no interest in being a good husband, much less a good stepdad. Luke steps in and is probably the first good male role model Jess has had consistently in his life ever. And even though Jess does lie to him and drops out of school and leaves suddenly with no goodbye, he does eventually get his life together, and he credits Luke with helping him get there, even if it took a while. Luke never gives up on Jess when he's living with him. He takes him in without a second thought, and he does everything he can to help Jess succeed in life. He talks with him, he gives him a job at the diner, a safe place to stay with a consistent and non abusive adult looking out for him. He gets Rory to tutor him, and most of all, Luke is just a good example. Yes, he has his moments, like lying to Jess about his mom calling over winter break. And yes, he does push Jess into the lake, one of my favorite scenes if I'm being honest. But these go to show the growing pains of jumping into the role of a parent so suddenly with no previous experience, and with a rebellious teenager no less. Jess doesn't believe in himself when he first appears in the show. He doesn't believe that he can ever make anything of himself. And as sad as that is, with his life experience, it's not hard to believe that's how he would feel. He doesn't see the point of trying because he never got any encouragement or help from his parents, and he has never been prioritized or properly looked after before he lives with Luke, and he's only 1 year away from being an adult at that point. His issues aren't just not having a father figure in his life. His mom could have stepped up a lot more, but it certainly contributed. The studies done on the effects of fatherlessness have shown that children without a steady father figure in their life do worse in school, are not as socially adept as those with the father figure, and are more likely to engage in risky behavior and get in trouble with the law. And Jess fits a lot of those traits. Even though he is intelligent and capable, he flunks his senior year due to lack of effort and participation. He engages in risky behavior and steals baseballs from the school, steals a garden gnome. He also is not great at making friends, also partly due to lack of effort, but also because I think he isn't sure how to build and keep relationships with people that last. He is able to build a relationship with Rory, but he isn't sure how to maintain it or how to express his true feelings and thoughts to her or anyone. He runs away instead, following the example he was given by his parents. His dad ran away, and his mom sent him away when he was too much for her. That is so hard for anyone to go through, and I feel for Jess throughout his first couple seasons on the show. It takes him a while to be able to express his gratitude and love for Luke, but he does eventually, and I love that he learns how to have healthier relationships and communication after so much turmoil in his life. I really don't think that the writers of the show meant to highlight the importance of father figures in a child's life when they were writing it, but it is funny just how many characters have issues with an absent or negligent father. Paris, Tristan, Madeline, Louise, and Lane also seem to have fathers who are not active participants in their lives, or at least not very good role models, even if they are. And yes, I know technically Lane's dad is there, we just never see or hear from him, so I'm not sure exactly how involved he is in her life, if at all. In fact, the only character that I could think of that seemed as though they had a good relationship with their father is Luke. And of course, Luke himself does his best to be a good dad to first Jess and then April when he learns about her. As much as I dislike that Luke keeps April hidden from Lorelai for so long and that they let it get in the middle of their relationship, I am glad to see at least one example of a good father figure in the show when we're lacking so many in the other characters and their lives, especially after doing some research on just how important it is for children to have a father figure in their lives. Maybe Luke is the father figure we all need in our lives, even if he sometimes pushes people into lakes. My next video, we'll be diving into the mothers on the show and how their parenting affected their children as well, so stay tuned for that. Who else in Gilmore Girls do you think has issues with their dad? Do you think the writers meant to display that having an absent dad can affect you poorly, or was that simply a byproduct of the main story they were trying to tell? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out our original audio drama, Adventures of the Dragonborn, on our channel. Hit that like button if you like this video, and subscribe to see more content from us in the future. See you next time.